Hello, my name is Kay. Welcome to Art Book Nook, where I love to share my collection of art and craft books. In this video, we're looking at Thinking in Watercolour by Jessie Kanelos Weiner. Have you ever thought of watercolour as more than just a painting technique? Well, this isn't your typical how to paint with watercolour guide. Jessie describes her book as a 30-day creative journey to help you to tell your own story using watercolour. Jessie is a freelance illustrator. She's been commissioned by luxury brands such as Cartier, Karl Lagerfeld, Nespresso, and has editorials in Vogue and The New Yorker, just to name a few. She's also co-authored several books and even gigs as a stand-up comedian. And Jessie's quirky sense of humour really comes across in her book. It's a lot of fun and I think you'll really enjoy it. The book is structured into 30 days of exercises, teaching you basic watercolour techniques and storytelling concepts, from the very simple to the most complex, to help you visualise your own world. In the introduction, Jessie shares how her journey with watercolour began. It all started when she moved to Paris in her early 20s, working as an au pair and trying to find her voice as an artist. Now, I won't spoil the story, you'll need to buy the book to read it for yourself, but I guarantee she'll have you laughing. I've popped links to where you can get your own copy in the description below, and if you use those links, it really helps to support this channel, so thank you. Jessie says whenever she tells someone she paints with watercolour, she gets one of two responses. That must be so relaxing, from those who've never tried it, or that's so difficult, from those who've dabbled in it themselves. But Jessie thinks it's a portal to wonderment. Her book has two objectives: helping you to build a watercolour practice and to develop your own visual ideas. So let's get started. So what will you need? Jessie likes to say that watercolour painting can be compared to cooking. You can always add more, but you can't take away, and the final result is as good as the ingredients you use. Once she learned which materials worked for her, she found it easier to execute her vision because she wasn't fighting against her paint and paper. And here Jessie has listed how to set yourself up for success. She covers paper, brushes and paint, and other supplies you'll need. And if you hear some strange background noises, I'm very sorry, but it's this monkey, my little border terrier called Tinker. He's playing with his toys. In Watercolour 101, Jessie begins by explaining how to activate your paint and answers a question she often gets asked: what's the difference between watercolour and gouache? She talks about the difference between colour intensity, how bright or saturated a colour is, and value, which is how light or dark a colour is. Here is a little exercise for you to take what you've learned about intensity and value and apply it to a watercolour. And Jessie highly recommends using a round brush when you're first starting out, as this brush has the versatility to create both fine lines and fill in large areas of the page. And she provides a hot tip which she calls the clock trick. This will help you hold your brush correctly. Jessie also covers 4 fundamental watercolour techniques, each one playing with the relationship between paint, water and paper to create different effects. And with all of them, timing is everything. She explains wet on dry, wet on wet, 50% flood and dry brush. It's a really helpful section if you're still getting used to how watercolour behaves. Here Jessie describes how to create texture by layering washes, using techniques like stippling, hatching and cross-hatching. Simple but very effective. This will add more depth and interest to your work. Each of the techniques Jessie describes contain very detailed step-by-step instructions which she encourages you to follow. In this section of the book, Jessie covers colour theory. She starts with the most basic version of the colour wheel. She walks you through primary colours, then secondary colours, with simple supporting exercises for you to try out. On the right-hand page, there's a hot tip where Jessie explains why using a desaturated complementary colour for shadows is much better than just reaching for black. It's a small tip, but one that can make a big difference in your paintings. We now move on to colour wheel number 3, tertiary colours, followed by a revisit of value in colour wheel number 4, which is all in black and white, and finally Colour wheel number 5 explores hue, tint, tone and shade. Completing these exercises is really worthwhile. They help you to understand the paints in your palette and how to use them more confidently. Jessie has painted a bowl of fruit using 6 different colour palettes, and she hopes it will inspire you to experiment with your own. There's full colour, monochrome, complementary, analogous, triad and tetradic, which is sometimes called quadratic. Jessie has also included 3 colour mixing exercises, and she makes a great point. The more control you have when mixing colours, the better range your artwork will have. These exercises are a great way to get to know your palette and to see how far you can stretch just a few pigments. So how do you choose a colour palette for a painting? Jessie suggests experimenting with a few different colour variations first before committing to a final version. On these pages, Jessie explains how to troubleshoot some common watercolour problems. She includes clear examples to show what's going wrong and how to fix it. Very helpful if you've ever had issues like streaky washes or muddy colours and weren't sure why. And I really like how Jessie has included this flowchart to help you when you want to mix a specific colour. So that wraps up the first part of Jessie's book, where she's covered basic watercolour techniques and colour theory. So now we've reached the fun section. The exercises that follow are designed to help you build a daily practice. And Jessie's really clear. There are no rights or wrongs. She doesn't want you to copy her, but to begin where you are right now. And Jessie will guide you through how to conceptualise ideas and start sharing your own story through paint. The first 5 exercises will reinforce the concepts fleshed out in the Getting Started section. The first exercise, Day 1, Save the White Space, is adapted from a classic art school assignment. This is usually done in charcoal, a still life in just 3 tones, white, black and grey. Here Jessie reimagines it in watercolour, and it's all about learning to see light as the subject. You're not expected to complete these exercises all in 30 consecutive days. Just take your time and work through them at your own pace. Day 2, Drawing from Life. Before you can break the rules of watercolour, you need to learn the basics, which is why art students are given so many still life assignments. This exercise maps out how to really analyse your subject and break it down into actionable steps. You'll also learn how to recreate texture using watercolour. In the Elements of Design, Jessie gives you a really helpful checklist to help you evaluate the success of your paintings. These are line, shape, form, space, colour, value and texture. It's a simple reference but a great way to step back and look at your work with a more thoughtful eye. Day 3, Still Life Layers. There's no one-size-fits-all technique for building up layers in watercolour, and this exercise helps you to see that. You'll be layering different techniques to help render and differentiate objects within a still life. Have you noticed at the end of each exercise, Jessie includes a final step that encourages you to reflect on your work? This is a really helpful learning tool, especially if you use it alongside her Elements of Design checklist. It encourages you to pause, think about what worked, what didn't, and how you might approach things differently next time. Day 4, A Layered Landscape. This is a really useful exercise for learning how to create depth, perspective and texture in a painting by building up layers with different levels of transparency. And Jessie includes a hot tip to help you paint lovely backgrounds. Day 5, In All Transparency. Jessie mentions that she always seeks out watercolour paintings when visiting galleries and museums, partly because they're often rare and often tucked away in a quiet corner. One day she stumbled across a painting called Black Watercolour, and I'm going to pronounce this incorrectly but I'll try my best, by Joachim Bandeau. At first glance she thought it was a photograph of an X-ray, but then realised it was actually layer upon layers of delicate transparent watercolour. The goal of this exercise is to get you thinking about colour in the same way by building it up slowly using transparent washes. If you're interested in this specific technique, there's a beautiful book by Olga Kolsch, How to Paint Transparent Watercolour Flowers, and I have reviewed this book and I've put a link in the description below to where you can watch it. Drawing is seeing and seeing is painting. Over the next 5 exercises, Jessie will help you to loosen up and explore the many possibilities that drawing with a paintbrush can reveal. She also touches on concepts like perspective, line weight, and how to capture a likeness in your work. Perspective 101 sets you up for the next few exercises. To get the most out of them, it really helps to understand the basics of perspective. Jessie walks you through a few simple rules that will take your watercolour from feeling flat and cartoon-like to something much more dimensional. Day 6, Still Life City. If you love to paint but don't know what to paint, Jessie suggests starting with the everyday and ordinary, then letting your imagination run wild. In this exercise, she challenges you to create a cityscape using found objects from around your home. Jessie's example includes a banana, a bowl, a drinking glass, some teacups and a roll of tape, and somehow it works. What a lovely way to think creatively and loosen up your approach. I can imagine a cheeky little mouse living in one of those teacups. Next up is drawing a portrait. Jessie's advice here is to let go of any preconceived ideas you may have about portrait drawing. Instead of focusing on features, she encourages you to simply draw shapes. It's a refreshing way to approach something that often feels intimidating, and it helps you to see the face as a series of relationships and forms rather than a checklist of details. Day 7 is a selfie session. Jessie admits that capturing a likeness is still one of the trickiest challenges, even for her. In this exercise, you'll take a stab at drawing yourself from a mirror. It's really all about observation, and by the end, you should have a loose, expressive representation of yourself. And as Jessie puts it, whether it looks like you or not is really in the eye of the beholder. This sounds like fun. I'm inspired to have a go myself, because what I see in my head is not what I see in the mirror. So goodness knows what it'll look like on the paper. Day 8 is Object Incarnate, and it's a really interesting one. This exercise is inspired by what Jessie calls her mental health barometer. You'll be projecting emotions onto an object. Jessie's example is a sponge. It might sound quirky, and it is, but it's also a very clever way to explore metaphor, emotion and storytelling through painting. I just love how Jessie blends her sense of humour with something that's actually quite thoughtful. It's playful, but not to be taken lightly. Day 9 is Gimme Superpowers. In this exercise, Jessie asks you to visualise your own superpower and draw it in comic book format. After living in France for more than 15 years, where being frank is pretty much a national pastime, Jessie says her dream superpower would be to not care what anyone thinks of her. So her comic book hero deflects criticism, like water rolling off a duck's back. It's witty and it's honest, and a really fun way to explore self-expression through art. Her final painting had me in stitches, with annotation like deflects all commentary from my mother-in-law regarding my weight, and impenetrable to unsolicited advice. Jessie really made me laugh with this one. Day 10 is Draw Me Something to Eat. Food is such a wonderful entry point into creating editorial watercolours, and in this exercise, Jessie walks you through her process of bringing a recipe to life and telling a story with it. Wouldn't it be lovely to create a little recipe book of your family's favourites? That would make such a thoughtful gift and leave a wonderful legacy too. The next 5 prompts are grouped together under the heading Observation Station. They're designed to encourage you to start applying the techniques you've been developing to your own surroundings by looking closely at the everyday world around you and finding beauty in the details. Day 11 is People and Places. In this exercise, you'll take a complex scene and break it down into manageable sections. You'll begin by laying in simple washes for each part and then build up the details. It's a good way to practice observation without getting overwhelmed by too much at once. Day 12, Cover Star. Here you'll create a magazine cover, New Yorker style, inspired by the place where you live. The idea is to identify what makes your location unique and try to capture the essence of it in your illustration. Day 13 is Eat, Ponder, Paint. Whenever you feel stuck or uninspired, Jessie recommends taking a walk around the block, just to clear your mind and let the ideas flow back in. Today's exercise is one she actually set for students on one of her workshops. She promised to buy them a proper croissant if they could tell the story of eating it in 4 to 6 simple sketches. Day 14, Scavenger Hunt. There are 2 twists to today's exercise. You'll be sketching directly with watercolour, no pencil, and you'll be using a limited palette of just 4 colours. The aim is to capture as much of the living world around you as you can in a short amount of time. It's a great way to loosen up and enjoy painting what you see right in the moment. One of the joys Jessie shares about teaching her students in Paris is being able to sketch right in front of a masterpiece in some of the world's greatest museums. In this prompt, she gives you a few tips on how to approach this. Day 15. Past, Present and Future Dolls. Jessie shares a personal story with us about her fashion faux pas when she arrived in Paris. Let's just say French ladies have a reputation for being effortlessly chic, and Jessie felt like she stood out a mile. This exercise is all about embracing that. You'll be dressing paper dolls in outfits from your past, present and what you imagine you might be wearing in the future. What springs to my mind? Well, massive bell-bottom trousers, and I don't mean flares, they were tame in comparison. And as for the future, well, I'm thinking nice comfy clothes and shoes. This next chapter is called Child's Play. It's all about letting go. Jessie reminds us that experimentation can be brushed off as frivolous, but actually play is at the heart of how she develops new styles and ideas. These next few exercises are not goal-orientated. They're about getting curious, having fun and discovering the wonder of watercolour. Day 17, Paint Me a Song. Today's exercise is to paint an album cover inspired by one of your favourite songs. Isn't that a brilliant idea? With streaming and downloading these days, we miss out on the magic of holding an album cover, looking at the artwork, reading the lyrics, and those little nuggets all about the artists themselves. Unless, of course, you're like me and you still buy your music on vinyl. Snap Out of It contains 4 little micro exercises to help you reconnect with the childlike wonder of just sitting down and putting your imagination straight onto paper. We have Loosen Up, where you'll paint with your non-dominant hand, Stick to It, where you'll go outside and find a stick at least 30 centimetres long and tape your paintbrush to the end of it, Doodle with watercolour, where you'll take a sheet of watercolour paper and start doodling freely, and Make It Like Matisse, where using the largest brush you have, you paint a whole sheet of watercolour paper in one colour and then cut shapes out. Day 17, Give Me Up. Today you'll create a series of sequential watercolour sketches that can be linked together to make a GIF, which is a simple animation. This will help you notice subtle changes like a tree gently swaying in the wind. Day 18, Forget Me Not. In this exercise, you'll use a zigzag technique to recapture something from your memory that you never want to forget. Day 19, Crop Job. This exercise is all about storytelling with your art. Jessie challenges you to paint a 4 to 6 frame storyboard showing the process of something you know how to do. How many times have you had to assemble something only to find the diagrams in the leaflet are totally unhelpful? I think there's a career opportunity here. And for something completely different and totally irrelevant, I've linked to a video on YouTube of British comedian Michael McIntyre, who's a wonderful storyteller, and he creates really humorous stories from everyday objects. I think you'll enjoy it. Day 20, Paint Me a Utopia. This exercise is all about communicating a big idea with the least amount of information. So you'll paint an abstract idea of utopia by breaking everything down into circles and squares. So no excuses. Everyone can paint a circle and a square. We've now come to the chapter on idea generation. It's all about minimising the roadblocks to creativity so you can create more interesting work. Day 21. Don't stress, draw. Jessie asks, do you ever feel like you're carrying the weight of the world on your shoulders? Well, in today's exercise, you'll discover some fun ways to unpack and digest all that life sometimes throws at you. Day 22. Surrealometer. In this exercise, you're challenged to find humour in the mundane and tell the story in 3 images, also known as a triptych. It could be something as everyday as the dirty dishes in your sink or chewing gum stuck to your shoe. Jessie chose a pigeon pecking away at a stale baguette. Day 23. Random spot generator. A spot illustration is a small drawing that reinforces an idea or concept. What's different about today's exercise is that you'll replace a traditional sketch with a mind map, a visual representation of a thought process that breaks down a complex idea into a digestible diagram. Day 24. C'est moi, self-portrait. Jessie loves flipping through her old sketchbooks to see how she once represented herself. With the rise of selfie culture, she found quite a few duck-lipped self-portraits from her early days in Paris. She made me laugh when I read this. Today's task is to take a good look in the mirror and paint a self-portrait that captures not just your appearance, but your current context, and most importantly, your emotional state. Day 25. IP Mashup. The greatest secret to any creative work is you don't have to reinvent the wheel. In this exercise, Jessie challenges you to mash up 2 different cultural properties that you know and love into a humorous multi-frame story. The exercise is a little bit different because there's some writing involved, and Jessie says just think of the text as another way to reinforce your visual ideas. We've now reached the final 5 exercises in Jessie's really humorous book called It's Personal. And Jessie says that now that your watercolour skills are up to snuff, it's time to take a deep dive into your psyche. The final 5 exercises will give you some building blocks to apply your own narrative, whether to recap a wonderful moment in your life or rewrite an experience that was less than pleasant. Day 26. Coat of Arms. Before the streets of Paris had names, and long before most Parisians could read, shops and artisans used beautifully intricate metal signs to advertise their services. These signs merged symbols that clearly represented what they offered. In today's exercise, Jessie challenges you to think about what symbols represent you, and to design a medallion or a personal coat of arms. What visual icons could you combine to tell your story? I think one of mine would have to be a flying pig. Day 27. Book cover of your life. In this exercise, you'll design a book cover for the story of your life. Imagine browsing through a bookshop, each book cover crafted to seduce and pull you in. Now picture your story on one of those shelves. What would the title be? What colours, shapes or imagery would capture the essence of you? This is the time to be bold and impactful. And if you're looking for a spark of inspiration, take a look at a very entertaining TED Talk called The Hilarious Art of Book Design with Chip Kidd. If you've never heard of Chip, he's known as the mad scientist of book design. His ideas are really witty and creative. You'll find the link in the description below under bonus content, and I guarantee you'll be familiar with some of his designs. Day 28. A moment when everything changed. Today, via a 6-frame comic strip, you'll tell the story of a moment in your life when everything changed for you. In step 1, Jessie gives you some helpful prompts based on her own life-changing moment when, after her graduation, she moved from America to Paris with just a few $100s in her pocket and an unconfirmed 1-year visa. Day 29. A walk in my shoes. Today's exercise invites you to create an illustrated map of a place that's meaningful to you, whether it's your daily route, a special memory, or a walk you love to take. The goal is to strike a balance between practicality and creativity, adding just enough detail to bring it to life without overwhelming the viewer. So we've now arrived at the final exercise in Jessie's fabulous book, Day 30, Compassion for Other Selves. Jessie asks you to reflect on a difficult moment from your past, one you may not have fully acknowledged or given yourself credit for overcoming. This is an opportunity to show compassion to your past self, to honour the resilience it took to get through that time. By illustrating this moment, you're not just telling a story, you're giving yourself the recognition and kindness you might have needed back then. In the epilogue, Jessie wraps things up by congratulating you, but reminds you that the journey doesn't end here. She invites you to keep momentum going by sharing how you are thinking in watercolour, and to tag her on Instagram or even join her creative community over on Substack. But above all, she asks you to remember that perfection is never the goal. To stay curious, be kind to yourself, and whatever you do, don't drink the watercolour water. Jessie's sense of humour has really shone through, hasn't it? Right up to the very end. Well, I don't know about you, but I really love Jessie's book, and I'm very inspired by many of the creative ideas she's shared. I'll admit I was a bit sceptical when I initially received this. I was expecting a how-to project book, but Jessie's book is so much more than that. I think it's a wonderful guide to self-reflection and mindfulness. What do you think? Please let me know in the comments below. I would really appreciate your thoughts. Well, if you're familiar with my book reviews, you'll know that I don't just review the book. I also like to share information about the artist and the author. So in the description below, you can find out more about Jessie Kanelos Weiner. I put links to her website and her social media channels, Facebook and Instagram. And Jessie also teaches on Skillshare. So if you'd like to experience some tutorials from Jessie, that's where you'll find them. And there's also, I put links to a couple of interviews with Jessie, and also Jessie actually discussing her work herself, addressing an audience. It's well worth a watch. I highly recommend that. She's very funny. I've also put links to where you can buy your own copy of Jessie's book, and if you use those links, it does support my channel. I'll earn a very small commission. It's peanuts really, but I would appreciate it. And don't forget the bonus links that I've added about Michael McIntyre and Chip Kidd. They're very funny and they'll cheer you up. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed my review, and I thank you so much for watching. I hope you found this review helpful. If you did, please give the video a like. It really helps YouTube share it with others who enjoy art books too. I post a new art book review every week, so if you'd like to see more, do consider subscribing. I truly appreciate it. If you found the review helpful, please feel free to leave a comment below. I reply to everyone. And if there's an art book you'd like me to feature, just let me know. I'll do my best to review it for you. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, happy painting.